Oh, we're live. Well, today we're going to talk about the result of a 16-year project on religious experience space. And we're going to illustrate a four-dimensional prayer, the introduction to one. And we're going to use the G.K. Chesterton novel, The Man Who Was Thursday. And we approach it as religious experience space engineers. Religious experience space is an ordered system, and in mathematical terms, certain things have certain sequences and operations and contents of items. And our approach as engineers is following the Wright brothers, who invented flight. And we're following the advice of Nassim Taleb that the real breakthroughs in knowledge occur through chance happenings and tinkering, as opposed to grand intellectual schemes. And the things we're going to talk about have to do with the qualities of the mind and the things that just are about the mind and that have no real philosophical or theological or even scientific seeming importance. And see, we're going to start out with the presentation of a solution before a problem. So the poetic version of Chesterton plays all sorts of tricks. And one of the tricks is, wouldn't it be nice to know a problem before we do the solution? And yet he jumps right into a solution. And the solution is a conversation at a secret meeting between of an anarchy organization that Syme and Gregory attend. And they're friends, but they're on opposite sides of the camp as far as whether they believe in this or not. And the first thing we notice is that they exist as a covenant, and this is represented in a generic form of they are participating in a gentleman's agreement. One of them is supposedly a criminal, the other is a supposedly detective, and the agreement is not to go to the police or reveal their true identities. But what they do in this meeting is incredible, and it's incredible twice. So it's something that's almost impossible, and it's doubly impossible. And what they do is they honor and glorify the silver rule, which is that one example is that we take the best possible intentions of what people say or do in order to judge them. And so Syme, who is the supposed conservative, takes the revolutionary point of view, and Gregory takes the conservative point of view. And they do it so well that no one believes that Gregory, who's the anarchist, as an anarchist, because he ends with the talking about mercy, like the prayer, especially those in most need of thy mercy. Whereas Syme's performance is validated by and acclaimed by all of the anarchists that want to elect him as their representative. Now we're impaired to understand that or to grasp this notion because it's disguised through intention. And in the Gospels, of course, the intention is presented as much less important than action. So in other words, if someone says, I'm going to go into the field tomorrow and work, and he doesn't do that, and another person says, I'm not going to go into the field to work like I should tomorrow, but then shows up and works, then we judge these people by their actions. And so this is the first dimension that we are going to be acquainted with, which is the covenant dimension. And it just says that we should say what the truth. I mean, what we're going to do. But now the second dimension comes in. That's independent of the first, and it says that we should honor the civil rule, which means that we should accept apologies. So, in other words, for example, if the person intended to go and work in the field, but something came up or he just forgot, and then he was able to then apologize for it and either make restitution or actually, go into the field and work the next day, then we would accept that. And now, strangely, of course, we've already entered. If we've suspended our belief in this story, we've already our disbelief actually in this story. We've already entered religious experience space, which is a two-dimensional ability to, in real time, process and analyze information. And what's so amazing about this, of course, is that our conscious mind, which is we're very proud of it because we're self-reflective and we can check ourselves and we can make sure that we're right, that we're right. Our default conscious mind is either a one-dimensional or a enriched one-dimensional awareness. And when we try to then, for example, convey what's going on in our mind, which is capable of up to 4 dimensions of active information processing in different dimensions, and we try to dumb it down to 1 dimension, it'll just make sense because it'll be tailored to when we're successful. It will be tailored to the situation perfectly, but it will necessarily have to leave out details of the analysis because our conscious mind can't handle that. So now we've finished with the solution to a problem, a double solution, and now we're presented with the unsolvable problem, which of course is presented in a somewhat humorous fashion. It's about Syme's parents, who were both radical. One was radically uh, prudish and conservative, and one is radically anarchist. And there's actually two unsolvable problems. One is there's no known reliable and reproducible real-time solution to uh, one parent forgiving or being non-judgmental towards the other. And then the second unsolvable problem is that um, as a quality of our self-reflective conscious mind, our mind tends to magnify any problems. So, and we can see this in the two parents, that they keep egging each other on, and so the joke is one parent is a total vegetarian, and the other is almost a cannibal. So, in what they profess to believe in. So, uh, there's a joke about it that Syme is then conservative in order to rebel against his two parents, although that's not actually how things work in life. Just because we don't like being judged or being not forgiven doesn't necessarily mean we're going to have those qualities ourselves. Now, and then the third event that happens is that Syme it goes back to when Syme was originally recruited as a police detective, and by a very large but hidden in darkness chief inspector. And Syme's comment is that this is the only job that he knows where just showing up is enough to pass the final test. And then the inspector says yes, and the job is martyrdom. So now we can unpack the final test. Now this is the second to the last phrase of the Lord's Prayer in the Gospel of Matthew. It's very theologically minded. And so we look at this, where in the Lord's Prayer this occurs. Now, the phrase before this, or a phrase that relates to this, is as we forgive those who trespass against us. In other words, we're talking about complete forgiveness because it's going to be as the Lord forgives us. So he offers us complete forgiveness. So we are then channeling that. And the other connection is to the of the phrase "Thy will be done," and this is a connection to the Garden of Gethsemane, where Jesus is looking at his contemplating his torture and crucifixion, and he says, "Not my will, but yours be done." So this is passing the final test. Being voluntarily exposing ourselves to the fear of God, and the fear will lead us through to something greater in our mind. Now we're going to see, moving on to, well, how does all of this work? So in other words, we're going to put our engineer hat on and say, well, what kinds of things uh, that are happening in our mind could cause complete forgiveness or completely non-judgmental attitude in real time right now. And here we're guided by the rather strange saying of Jesus, which is my burden is light and my yoke is easy. In other words, it's very easy to do this, and it's very easy to control it. The yoke is the control of the oxen. And for any of those of us who've had much experience in life at all, there's not too many things in life that are easy to control and are very a light burden. That those things in life don't seem to be actually mix. And so what he's talking about is what he calls it his heavenly kingdom, the spiritual kingdom. And it also applies to how our mind works. And that's why I said the engineer's hat. That how could we instantly and effortlessly, for example, completely forgive someone or have a completely non-judgmental attitude? And so here we're going into the storyline where it's just a complete rampant paranoia where everything is switched with everything, and criminals are friends or foes, and foes become friends, and criminals become policemen, and policemen become criminals, and people who are being chased become those who are being chased, and uh, uh, over and over, it's reiterated, and kind of in a breathtaking subtlety and also gymnastic kind of flexibility. And this is the main story throughout in the novel that it recounts this. Well, it just so happens that one of the reflexes that we have in our mind, and again, we should listen. A reflex, a reflex in our a reflex is something that happens, and it happens without our needing to control it very much, and it's quite easy because it just happens by itself. So one of the reflexes that we can use is the reflex of our mind's reaction to self-contradiction. And we are a continuity manufacturing machine, mental in our mind, that from very early age, we know that called object constancy, where if an object goes behind another object, that object doesn't disappear. It actually is still there. And it's wonderful reflex because it prevents us from walking off of cliffs just because, our head is turned and the cliff isn't, directly in our line of sight. But what happens, for example, and people who have experienced with experience with psychedelics, I'll say anyway, that when things are permeated or attached to self-contradiction, they can open up our minds to different possibilities. So, for example, how do we forgive people? Well, we can say the person was real, but all of the circumstances, the time, the place, the weapons, or the circumstance, the I don't know, setting, whether it was cold or hot, everything was uh, different, never existed. So the offense was real, but all the other things, all the other circumstances were not real, didn't occur. In fact, even maybe even the person who did the offense is not real. They They both exist and don't exist at the same time. And then the third thing, besides person and circumstance, we can also say that the time is unreal. And in other words, the offense never occurred in the past, isn't occurring now, and will never, ever occur in the future. And we can do the same with a judgmental attitude, which is our judging people according to some misfortune. But if the misfortune never existed, then we can't really judge people. Or if it's unreal, then our mind just refuses to go through with the judgment because it manufactures the continuity and it papers over the self-contradiction. And so so we have the first dimension of prayer, the we want it, and the second dimension of prayer, the first dimension having to do with faith and covenants and truth. And then we have the second dimension of prayer, which is the complete forgiveness and completely non-judgmental attitude, the honoring glorification of the silver rule. Now, this is a bit hard for us to process because today in our culture we have a glorification of the lack or the violation of the silver rule. In other words, we see people who proudly take the worst possible interpretation of someone's speech or actions and then uses that to judge them and condemn them and destroy them. But it's possible to glorify the silver rule, keeping the silver rule, and that is the second dimension of prayer. So we want complete forgiveness, completely non-judgmental attitude, and then we add right now because this is just real time. It's not hypothetical, and it's not abstract, and it's not in hindsight. And then we move along to the last two dimensions. And in order to get these, there's an unbelievable coincidence in this book that one of the persons who is running away from Syme is riding an elephant, giant elephant, and he throws a piece of paper on it out, and it says the word pink on it. And many of you know there's a psychological observation that says that when we say don't think about pink elephants, our mind automatically forms the image of a pink elephant. And it helps for this trick to work if either the thing that is mentioned has some emotional tension to it, or if it's something that is imaginary or self-contradictory. And so pink elephants don't exist as far as I know. So they're gray, aren't they? So now we can add this. We can go back to the ancient Greek, like Aristotle and the ancient Greek philosophers who knew about the law of non-self-contradiction, which says that things can't both exist and not exist at the same time and in the same manner. Oddly enough, of course, the entire universe is, according to the Schrödinger equation that measures quantum mechanics, is based on, and what in mathematics is a self-contradiction. It's the square root of, and it's represented as the square root of -1. I won't go into it, but or it's also the letter I. So it's odd that our universe depends on this concept. So now the complete four-dimensional prayer is we want it, complete forgiveness, completely non-judgmental attitude right now. Don't think about we both exist and do not exist at the same time and in the same manner. Don't think about complete forgiveness that both exists and does not exist at the same time and in the same manner. Don't think about completely non-judgmental attitude that both exists and does not exist at the same time and in the same manner. Don't think about right now that both exists and does not exist at the same time and in the same manner. And you'll notice we slowed down our what we're talking about because it's just a reflex that happens when that validates our prayer and multidimensional prayer especially. And finally, we reach the last paragraph or so of the book, and we're treated to what actually is supposed to happen when we do this prayer. What is this adventure in religious experience space supposed to be? And so Syme describes his experience with coming out of his prayer, this prayer. He passes through the fear of the Lord, this giant mass that he was afraid of since childhood, passes through, and without any startling being awake, he lands in this very peaceful place. So, and why would it be peaceful? Well, our ability to be non-judgmental and to forgive is enhanced by our peacefulness. So, and so, what he's trying to describe, what he perhaps Chesterton also is trying to describe, is a non-self-reflective, intuitive mental space that is reflective in our conscious mind, and that it reflects on the religious experience space in our conscious mind. So, in other words, he wouldn't. There would be no magnification of like a startling. A magnification of any non-peaceful experience, but that it would be a seamless kind of flowing out of him. And this is something that the religious writers have tried to explain with limited concepts. And when we go to the Gospels, we hear that someone says, "Well, teach us how to pray better," thinking that we can take in religious experience space and just make it stronger, make our faith stronger that way. But the other alternative, of course, is that religious experience flows out of us. And so, for example, the early writers talked about us becoming God. And then the modern translators put this in God in capital in small letters instead of capital letters. But the problem isn't the capitalization; it's the idea, it's the concept that that it's a two-dimensional concept. In other words, we are in our non-self-reflective, intuitive state, observing what's going on, but it's God flowing through us. God is through us, with us, and in us. Um, and um, and Chesterton winds up with some images that relate to pregnancy and birth as well. The red brick could be could relate to that, and also the woman at the end who is has a flower, and she's described, with having gravity. And just an interesting detail, gravity is a medical abbreviation for the number of pregnancies that one has. So, and this is, in the Hail Mary, this is described as too, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb. And then, so, well, okay. Have a good day.